Alrighty, Chief, we're going on the record. A little late, but you have a very busy job, we know, so you have lots of calls that are happening all the time. Let's go straight into it. 6 months on the job, how do you feel?
Wow. Wow. It's been a long 6 months. It's hard to, think about, February 8th and where we are now. So many different things, so many challenges, so much, has happened over the 6 months. We've done so many things within the organization, made so much change in the organization, but I still struggle. And I struggle with the level of violent crime in the city. I still stay up at night, when I consistently see, violent crime continuing to spike, 78 homicides. As hard as we've worked, as much time and energy as we spent trying to address violent crime, we continue to see homicides and shootings occur in our city. And so just trying to figure out, how do we manage this? How do we get a unified approach? How do we really have community more engaged and have community helping the department figure out how we can get control of what's happening in our community?
I know one of the things you also worked on is to reduce the violent crimes. You're working with homicides and the violent crime. Mm-hmm. And you talked about 100 guns. I know we put that out all the time, but 100 guns a month.
Yeah.
It's a lot.
Yeah, I mean, that is, the challenge that we face in the city of Oakland, recovering over 100 guns a month, every month of 2021. It really demonstrates to you how prevalent guns are in our community, how we have a true proliferation of firearms, both automatic weapons like rifles and things of that nature, high capacity magazines, things that have no business in a community, but they are, and they're being used. But also the traumatic impact that it's having on those residents of our city that have to hear these gunshots or experience this violence. I mean, it is really having an impact. I don't think that you can go into any community in East or West Oakland and don't hear stories about gunfire in their community. And that's really challenging.
Now, I know you have a new strategy that you want to talk about to combat that violent crime, the homicides, and of course the robberies and the shootings. I know you have the VCOC, which has been doing a very great job, but you have something new that you just implemented within the last few days?
Yes. It's our all hands approach, that when you have a shortage in resources, but you have a true problem, you have to make some adjustments. And that's what we're going to do in the Oakland Police Department, is that no officer in this organization will be immune from coming out into the streets and supporting our field operations. So officers that have desk duty, we're going to ask that they come out a couple hours during their shift and actually support our patrol division, answer calls for service, help identify those that are driving crime in our community. We, have to do everything we can to manage this crime problem in the city of Oakland, and there has to be some level of enforcement and accountability to address those that want to commit very heinous and violent crimes. I'm alarmed at the things that we've seen in Chinatown, the videos that I watch, when Good Samaritans are attempting to step up and they're being shot. It really says that there is a need for greater presence and stronger levels of accountability in the city of Oakland, and that's what I'm seeking to do.
I know Chinatown is just one part, but I know you're looking to go throughout the entire city, correct?
Yeah, I've authorized overtime details in Deep East Oakland, more officers patrolling the international corridor, more officers around the Bancroft area so that we can have more high visibility in our MacArthur corridor as well. So we're doing everything we can, utilizing the resources that we have, using the overtime funding that we have to actually suppress some of this crime.
I want to go back to something you just said. We're talking about the videos that we've seen in Chinatown. Good Samaritans wanting to come in and step up and help out, but that's not something you recommend, correct?
No, I don't want to see people sacrifice their safety. I know that people want to help, and I know people want to step in and prevent these things from happening, but this is dangerous, and there's potential risk there that someone could be shot, somebody could be hurt or injured. But I do understand that it's hard to watch. It's hard to see somebody assaulted. It's hard to see somebody robbed. But I think it's important that we identify who the perpetrator is. So if you can observe and report, that's always helpful. But you have to be careful putting yourself in harm's way, because it could lead to two people being injured or hurt. and that's not helpful. But I understand people's feeling about seeing certain things happen in their community and want to step up and step in. And so I just encourage people to be safe and to give us a call and allow us to respond.
Now, I know you've been saying something lately, so I want people to understand. You said, 10 years ago, the population was 40,000 less people.
Yeah.
Let me go back the other way. Now it's 40,000 more people than it was 10 years ago, but your force is smaller than it was 10 years ago. What's that about?
Yeah, I mean, the department has not grown at the pace that the city has grown over the last 10 years. When you look at Oakland 10 years ago, it was in the 390,000 people range. Currently, the city is now over 430,000 people. That is a 40,000 person difference. 40,000 new residents in the city of Oakland, but we have a smaller police department than we had 10 years ago. The department is shrinking while the city is growing. That means that 40,000 people, that's like a little city. It's like a small city, but without an additional police officer. So it makes it challenging because it's going to lead to more calls for service, more need for public safety with less resources to address it. It's also going to stretch the resources that we already had to its bandwidth. And so I just think that just doesn't sort of balance, right? That you get 40,000 additional residents, but you don't get any additional police officers. You actually make a decision to shrink the police department by 57 officers. And so that is causing some significant challenges with stacking of calls for service, slower response times, things like that really impacts communities' trust in the public safety system.
Some people say, well, you have 4 academies coming in the next 2 years. Will that help out?
No, because the average academy is producing 30 graduates per academy. And so 2 academies will produce 60 graduates. But our attrition rate hovers over 5 a month. 5 a month means that we lose 60 and then we gain 60. That's an even number. We don't actually net any additional officers. But right now, we're losing a much higher rate of officers. For the last 3 months, we've lost an average of 9 officers. So that's double what we anticipated. That means that we're definitely going to have a deficit in officers on the streets, and that this department will continue to shrink as a result of these numbers. So we're in desperate need of additional academies to bring in additional bodies.
You mentioned overtime as well. Overtime is great if you have the people to take that overtime. Yeah. How does that work out?
Well, no department wants to rely on overtime to take care of the tasks that they're responsible for. You want to have people in the seats, bodies that actually come in, and you can rely on every day to be there and handle different calls for service and public safety issues. Overtime also, has an impact on people's health and well-being. Right? We don't want to burn these officers out. We don't want officers who are fatigued to be out there making decisions. We want our officers to be fresh. We want our officers to be in the right state of mind when they go out there and make very critical decisions. So overtime is good, but you always have to monitor it and monitor your officers' well-being as well. We would much rather have officers instead of overtime.
What are your officers saying? I know you go visit your officers quite frequently. What's the word on the street?
Well, officers are worried about, how people feel about them in the community. What is the level of community support? Officers want to know, are there new officers in the pipeline? Are we recruiting more officers? How do we show officers our appreciation for what they do? I think as a leader in the police department or in any organization, no matter what organization you're in, the work environment is truly important. People are happier and much more productive when they come to a positive work environment. And that's been difficult to do as chief of the Oakland Police Department, because a lot of times all officers are hearing are negative things about them. And it's not consistent with the job that they do every day. It's not, they know that they're going out there working their butts off trying to be responsive to the needs of the community, but they oftentimes are met with negative comments. And so I think it's just a balanced approach of reassuring them that I appreciate what they do and that there are so many others in this city that appreciate the calling that they've taken on.
A lot of people say politics are playing games with public safety. Do you agree with that?
Well, I think that politics and public safety shouldn't be mixed. right? When we talk about the safety of a community, that shouldn't be a political issue. Now, we can talk about police reform. We can talk about people wanting to see more constitutional policing, more fair and just policing. They could talk about wanting to see a better police force, seeing good police officers. But I think that's completely different than talking about public safety and how you address violence and crime and addressing, holding people accountable that are committing crimes, that are participating in violence and criminal street gangs and involved in heinous events like we continue to see. I think those are two different things. I think everybody, no matter what side of the table you sit on, wants to live in a safe city, in a safe community. But it takes a unified effort, and we all have to acknowledge it doesn't have anything to do with the politics side of it. It has to do with a safe community, people feeling safe. When you're in a city where people don't feel safe coming out their homes, when they don't feel safe letting their kids play outside, when they don't feel safe going to the grocery store and coming back home at night because they're in fear that something is happening, that is a public safety issue that all of us should be concerned about.
All right, Chief, I know you got to go. This is a lot that we can talk about. I think we're going to actually record one and just let it play out so we can have more about this conversation next week. So we'll actually do 3 this month on the record. Is there anything you want to say before we go any further?
No, I mean, 6 months. I hope to be here 6 in the
at
next
least 6 more.
At least 6 more months. I mean, obviously I love the city of Oakland, being someplace that I'm born and raised in. I think every day I'm able to come to work and be the chief of police of the Oakland Police Department. I'm honored, I'm proud, and I do my best to do a good job every day, and I hope people see that.